Join us for a journey as we go back to the great civilizations of the past. Who were the people? What were they like? How did they begin? And how did they end? Let's find out on episode 37, 809 through 806 BC. Previously, on The Fan of History, we spent 3 episodes with the Spartans. But now it's time to go back to the main action of Assyria. Shamshi-Adad V of Assyria crushed Babylon into anarchy. Assyria's western territories had been neglected for 17 years. To the north of the empire, the power of Urartu is ever increasing. Dan, what are these Assyrians going to do with themselves?
That's the question. Remember how Shamshi-Adad V was obsessed with going to Babylon every year and beating them up again and again?
Right.
Now his son, Adad-Nirari III, is the king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. And Assyria is still the strongest state in the Near East, with Urartu as a close second at this time. Adad-Nirari III is the 6th king of the empire, and we talked a lot about his mother, Queen Semiramis, who was not as great as her legend. Sorry.
It's okay.
The vassal states in the west, or every vassal state of the Assyrians, it's tough to be a vassal state of Assyria. So they are all looking to avoid the heavy tribute imposed on them. And now they haven't been to Syria for 17 years, so those states are not paying their tribute.
How dare they?
Adad-Nirari III is a complex personality, and it's very hard to tell if he... You could say that Shamshi-Adad V was a pretty bad king, but this guy is more grey. He has the traits of a great warrior king, and it's hard to judge his success because Assyria is in a downward spiral that sort of stops during his reign. His reign is fairly long, but he doesn't stop the spiral. So when he will be gone, the empire will be in a really bad position. We also do not have the full documentation of his reign. We only know of the Western campaigns. So there will be campaigns that I can only name a name in, and we don't really know what happened. Okay. And there is still a chance that in Iraq, this is one of the things we should be looking for about the Assyrians, what happened during Adad-Nirari III's reign, because it is fairly long. And we will start immediately with one of those campaigns in 809 BC. Adad-Nirari III attacks the Medes. Okay. And there's a place mentioned called Ecbatana. There will be 8 campaigns during Adad-Nirari III's reign against the Medes.
8?
Do you know anything about the Medes?
The Medes. It sounds familiar, but no. I can't say I know anything about the Medes.
We are still thinking about the role of the Medes, but when Assyria ends, the Babylonians take over in the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Okay. And then the Medes take over in what is called the Median Empire, but this is very contested right now. This is in the 6th century BC. And the Median Empire, a part of that are the Persians. And then the Persians take over the Median Empire. So the Great Persian Empire rises out of the Median Empire. So the Medes and the Persians are very connected.
Oh, wow.
And very similar. And there's a question if they are really different people. In this time, the Assyrians consider the world, like there's the civilized world of Assyria, Babylonia, maybe Syria, Egypt, like the core civilized world.
Makes sense.
And then at the outskirts of the world, like the Russian steppes or Pakistan, there is the Manda, the horde from God knows where. An enormous barbarian horde that just lives on the edge of the world. And the Persians and Medes are their cousins. They're like a little civilized. But they can talk to the Manda. And in 712 BC, this is a spoiler, the Manda will strike down on the Assyrians.
That seems to be a theme throughout all of human history.
Yes, but there has the barbarian invasions of Mesopotamia so far has been from fairly nearby. So Mesopotamia has managed to domesticate the barbarian hordes for thousands of years. But when in 712 they will meet an enemy they cannot domesticate. And it will be pretty much the first invasion of horse people like the Mongols and the Huns. But we'll talk about that in a much later episode. About the Medes, at this time they're living south of Mania, that is in the Zagros Mountains, to the east of what is today Iraq, in what is today Iran. So on the outskirts of the Assyrian Empire to the east. And there could be a very simple purpose to attacking the Medes. The Medes are close to the Assyrian fortresses in Samua, but the Medes have horses, and the Assyrians need horses. The purpose of these, what is called campaigns, they might just be horse-stealing raids. And we are still quite far away from the Median Empire. So the Medes seems to be a troublesome foe, at least, because they need these many campaigns to handle them. But they are nowhere close to Assyria in power.
That's, If you need horses to fight, and you're going into a horse-rich area, seems like you would be at a disadvantage straight away.
Yeah, but the Assyrians have horses. They just need more horses. And the Assyrians are better fighters.
Okay.
So kill the Medes, take their horses. Could be the plan.
All right.
Let's jump all over the world to China.
All right. What's going on in China? It's been a while since we've talked about China.
And we're still in the Western Zhou, and the Zhou dynasty is strong. And there's a king called Yuan, we talked about earlier. And in 808 BC, he has to intervene in the kingdoms of Lu, Wei, and Qi. These are all subject kingdoms.
Okay.
The Zhou kingdom itself is very small, but it controls a big area of which we now call China. They just called it the Zhou hegemony.
Okay.
But there are powerful nobles in these subject kingdoms, and they fight each other, and they sort of undermine the control of the central Zhou state. So in this decade, the king has to intervene in these three places. And the control of the Zhou dynasty over the Chinese states is weakening constantly. So we are close to the collapse of the Western Zhou Empire. But for now, it is quite a powerful state.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. And it's been around for a long time.
It's definitely not as big as China is today, but it is huge it is the biggest state in the world.
Right.
In 808 BC.
It's funny how this far back you can see stuff that's trickling towards, if you jump way in the future, like like the Boxer Rebellion and all that. Like it's just this slow, like a slow burn almost.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
And it's interesting also how China was the most powerful economy in the world for 2,000 years.
Right.
And we have only spent 200 years during which China has not been the most powerful economy in the world. And they are on their way back.
Yep. That's crazy.
Back to Assyria.
Back to Assyria. Who do we got going? What else do we have going on in Assyria?
We have another mystery campaign of Adad-Nirari III. As a good Assyrian king, he has to campaign every year.
Oh, yeah.
And this This time he attacks a place called Gusano. And I don't know what that is. There is an Assyrian province called Gusana, which sounds similar. It's in the Bible as Gosan.
Right.
But it's inside the empire.
Why would they attack their own? That's weird.
It even seems to be inside the Assyrian heartland. So it's not a subject area. It's not a vassal.
Right.
It's not anyone paying tribute. It's an Assyrian province. So maybe there was a rebellion or something?
That's weird.
If anyone knows anything about Gusanu, please let us know. But
Yeah,
I would be
interested to hear.
Yeah, definitely. But it seems that if there was domestic trouble, it is gone after this year. In 808 BC as well, things happen in Urartu to the north, in what is today Armenia pretty much. Menua, the king of Urartu, rises his son up to be co-regent. So Inushpua also becomes the king of Urartu. So father and son ruling together.
Like an internship.
Yeah, pretty much. And also, of course, it helps succession. But the Urartians doesn't have any big problems with succession that we have seen. Maybe it's because of things like this. It is unclear which year this happens. So 808 BC is just a good guess. But it happens sometimes between 810 and 796 BC. We have 4 monuments from the Urartians where Inushpua is mentioned as the co-regent. But he never succeeds his father.
Whoa. Do we know what happened?
Now we'll talk about that in a later episode.
Okay.
Menua is a pretty good king, and he keeps Urartu growing. And a weird fact about him is the Assyrians never mention him. So maybe he wasn't that active in threatening the Assyrian border, but rather built up his country in the north.
Right.
But the Assyrians they don't believe in Menua.
Ignore him, he'll go away.
I'll talk a little about the religion in Urartu, because they have their own unique religion. And we have mentioned this before a bit. Their main god, they have 69 gods. Most of them are unknown from other cultures, but others are adapted from local gods, just like the Romans did.
Right.
Their main god is Haldi, the god of war. And he sounds very similar to Ashur, the god of war in Assyria, who is also the #1 god, or the only god of the Assyrians. And the main difference between Haldi and Ashur is that Haldi is worshipped in a place called the House of Weapons. And this is a temple filled to the brim with weapons. So it's a very violent place, or at least a very militaristic place. And there is Shivini, the sun god, but Shivini is now #2 on the top 10 Urartian gods list. Yeah. Haldi says to the Urartians that they have to go on yearly campaigns.
That sounds familiar.
That? Yes. And of course, these campaigns are not against the Assyrians at this point, because that would be suicidal.
Right.
So they fight the Northerners. And it's extremely hard to understand what kind of small mini-kingdoms are in the mountains between the Mesopotamian plains and the Russian steppe.
Okay.
But there seems to be an endless supply of small kingdoms that the Urartians can conquer. So whenever the Urartians write something, they talk about winning important victories against kingdoms nobody has ever heard of. The problem then is that these small northern kingdoms north of the Urartians, they keep the Manda at bay. Because they keep out the hordes from the Russian steppes. Okay. And if the northern kingdoms grow too weak, there is nothing between Urartu and the main tribes of the Russian steppe. And at this point, the main tribe is the Cimmerians, who are not Conan, as we have mentioned before.
No.
In 807 BC,
Conan so bad, but I understand.
Yeah, it's hard not to think of them as Conan. In 807 BC, Adad-Nirari III attacks the Manians. This is the third kingdom in the triangle of Urartu and Assyria and the Manians. So they are the smallest of the three. They are southeast of Musasir, the important Urartian religious center. And there's a big lake there called Lake Urmia. And you can check this on the map. Lake Urmia is very interesting because it is almost gone today. The change in the environment has reduced the size of this lake enormously, but it has happened in the last 50 years.
Oh, is that the one that suffered from the Russian terraforming?
No, that's what's Aral?
Aral Sea?
Sea, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But there are thousands of lakes and places like this today.
Okay.
Google that. It's pretty horrifying, actually. And Lake Urmia is one of the victims. We don't know what happened in Adad-Nirari's campaign because this is not a Western campaign. We only know what happens in the Western campaigns.
Right.
But Adad-Nirari III goes in, crushes the Manians. They are also under pressure from Urartu. And they still survive somehow.
Well, good for them.
Yeah, they will be around for quite a while. And it is likely at this time that the Medes and the Persians are vassals to the Manians. That the Manians have some sort of control over the Zagros Mountain horse tribes.
I gotcha.
The Manians are a bit mysterious, actually. We don't know too much about them. Let's go back to Babylon, the great city, and Babylonia, its country.
Babylon. Poor Babylon.
Yeah. Yes, Babylon is really, really poor right now. The Babylonians are notorious for writing everything down. And we have not a single source of written material from this period from Babylon. We actually don't know who ruled Babylon. The only thing we have is a reference to 5 kings in Babylon between 811 and 800 BC. So 5 kings in 11 years. And one of those kings might have been Adad-Nirari III himself under some Babylonian name.
I gotcha.
And it is possible that Babylonia was a vassal state to Assyria, but if it was, Assyria took no responsibility for getting Babylon back on its legs. And of course you have the 3 barbarian people in Babylonia as well, also causing trouble. The Chaldeans in the south, in the swamps, the Kassites in their own kingdom, and the roaming Arameans, who are not, as soon as there's trouble, they remember their roots and go back into the countryside and start plundering stuff. We have the name of one king in 800 BC called Ninurta Apla X, because we can't tell what the third name is. And we have,
I was say that's interesting. So they just put an X when they can't read it?
Yes.
Gotcha.
So we don't know anything about this guy except this partial name. And he's probably not a Chaldean. So that was confusing, but now it will get a lot worse because I have to mention Egypt, otherwise people get sad. I would really like to avoid Egypt.
Yeah, I mean, what he's about to read is, I mean, if you don't see it, I don't know how you can keep up with this in your head, because my goodness. These names.
Yeah, and if anyone is an expert on Egyptian third intermediate period, please enlighten us. But this is what I've come up with, is the situation in Egypt. Egypt is still living in splendid isolation, and they still think they are the greatest country in the world. But they're not in the Iron Age yet, and everyone else is, pretty much. So we have some pharaohs, a bunch of them. We have Pedibus the First. He rules Thebes and the Western Oasis, that is the western part of the Delta. He is of the 23rd dynasty. We have Takelot II. He rules in southern Egypt, also called Upper Egypt. He seems to be of both the 22nd and the 23rd dynasty, because all of these guys are still Libyans, of Libyan descent.
Okay. And
then, in the north, in Tanis itself, the old capital of 22nd dynasty, Sheshonq III rules. And he seems to be like the pharaoh of the greatest prestige. But he can't even control his own territory, so several great chiefs of the Ma, war chiefs of Libyan tribes, are ruling independently, just paying lip service to Sheshonq III in the Delta. Of course, the Libyans love the Delta. So Takelot II was pretty clever to go to the wealthy south, where the Libyans think it's too hot.
It's too hot. That's funny.
And we have a source here, but he is also extremely confusing. So let's talk a little about Osorkon III, who might also be Osorkon B. We have mentioned this guy before. His full name is Usermatre Setepanamun Osorkon III CS.
Yeah, I will believe what you said. I'm not gonna, no way I can refute that.
There is trouble in the south. There is civil war. And he is fighting in the south to reclaim the south for his father. He also has a brother, Bakken Patah, who is a general in his forces. They are stationed in Heracleopolis, which is a very strategically located city in the middle of Egypt. So Takelot II dies in this decade. That was the guy ruling in southern Egypt, ruling in parts of southern Egypt. And Osorkon III is his son and inherits the claims to Thebes and the south. Shoshenq III in the north ensures that Osorkon III is the rightful ruler of the south, and they have a royal marriage alliance. But
Seems
then we
nice.
have, yes, then we have this guy, Pedibus I, who is conquering the south for taking Osorkon III's stuff. And we have an inscription from Osorkon III with a first-hand report from the south. Are you confused yet?
I am trying to keep up, I swear.
Please read Osorkon III comments in your best Egyptian voice.
Oh boy. Hold on.
And make it whiny.
Make it whiny.
Yes.
Okay. He whines. No one in authority came to help me. I was alone without a friend.
Poor Osorkon III.
Yeah. Where?
And we're still almost 80 years away from Pi. And Pi will finally unite Egypt again. But we have 80 years of chaos in Egypt ahead of us. And it's amazing how isolated Egypt was, because nobody external profits from this internal chaos in Egypt. Because Egypt is just so isolated. And it's the Nile is everything, and we live at the Nile, and we are far away.
Right.
I have some information from India this time.
Oh my goodness. We never have information from India.
Yeah, it's because they don't have writing. So all we have are oral legends. Because the Indians have forgotten writing. They once had writing, but they don't have it anymore. But still, this is hard to believe.
Okay.
But things happen in India at this point, and I can't see how these things happen without writing. There is a major Aryan kingdom in the north of India called Panchala. We are in the Vedic times.
Okay.
And there is this important character called Baudhayana. He does a lot of stuff. He writes the Baudhayan Sutras.
Okay.
They are about Dharma. They are about the daily rituals you should undertake, about the Vedic sacrifices. But he's also a mathematician. And he comes up with the Pythagorean theorem. That's
how
400 years before Pythagoras.
Wow. Okay.
He can also find a circle with the same area as a square. So he must have known of pi.
That's amazing.
He can also get the square root of 2 correct to 5 decimals.
I thought you said they had no writing.
They have no writing. So how does he do this?
I don't know.
And this is the nature of Indian information at this time, but this seems to be fact. But without writing, you can't really prove much.
Right.
And this continues down to the 3rd century BC, or the 4th century BC, but somewhere around there. And this has upset many Indians who listen to this because they have a lot of oral traditions.
Sure.
But we're trying to stick to what can be proven here. But we know that this is probably the age of the first Upanishads. Do you know what the Upanishads is? Or?
I should, because I took a class at university and they talked about the Upanishads, but other than remembering what they were from, I can't tell you anything about them. I'm sure my professors
about what I knew
upset.
before I studied this. It's a collection of Vedic texts.
Mm-hmm.
It's too early to speak about Hinduism. We are in the Vedic times. It's sort of pre-Hinduism.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Upanishads, there is the earliest emergence of central religious concepts of Hinduism, but also of Buddhism and Jainism. And if we get to the 6th century BC in this show, we'll talk a lot about Jainism. Because it is very important on the level of Buddhism and Hinduism for the 6th century BC. The Upanishads are extremely hard to date. So some scholars claim that they are from this time, from 805 BC or so. But maybe they don't appear before 600 BC. That's the uncertainty we are playing with here. We have more than 200 known Upanishads. And that's about what I got from this.
Mm.
But they are still important texts in Hinduism.
Right.
I also wanted to check in with the Olmecs in Mexico.
Hey, we haven't checked in with the Old Maxima. Also a long time.
In 2 episodes, we will do the great civilizations of the world in 800 BC. And they will show up there, of course. But
Cool.
I want to check in with them in this episode as well. Because the Olmecs, they really live in splendid isolation. They think they are the only civilized culture in the world. And that ends about here. Because there's a little civilization in their neighborhood now. And it's the Mayans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Mayans formed their first statelet. So mini-state. Today it's referenced as La Blanca. That was definitely not its name.
No.
It's on the Pacific coastal region of Mexico. And the Olmecs are pretty much around the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
Don't care much about the Pacific. So this is happening close to the Olmecs, and the Olmecs are probably heavy influence on the Mayans. So the Mayans are not the Olmecs, but they are very much influenced by the Olmecs, which is a far bigger and more civilized civilization. But the great center of Olmec civilization at this point is still La Venta. And that's. I have some information on the Olmec diet here. Do you want it?
Sure. Why not?
They mainly eat fish, turtle, snake, crabs, shellfish, birds, and rabbits and deers. But their main protein source is dogs.
Dogs?
Yes.
What kind? Does it say what kind of dogs, or just dogs in general?
I suppose I don't know, actually, so I shouldn't. But if I am allowed to speculate wildly, I think it's like Chihuahua-like dogs or very small dogs.
Very small ones?
Yeah, I hear they taste the best.
Because I know that there's also a long-legged dog in South America. I was wondering if that would be the same one.
Does it taste good?
I couldn't tell you.
To stop the rumors before they happen, we do not eat dogs in Sweden.
Oh, gosh. Stop the rumors. Sure, Dan. Likely story.
And that's it for this episode.
All right. Well, I guess we will see everybody next time in our next episode, where we're going to talk about the end of the 9th century BC. There we're going to meet Shamshi-Ilu, an Armenian, who will become the most powerful man in Assyria.
Yeah, remember Diane Usher, the field marshal who had a lot of influence?
I do indeed.
This is Diane Usher 2.0, bigger and improved.
Oh, a new version.
Yes.
They got the update.
Very much upgraded.
Also, the Assyrian royal army will finally return to the west, to Syria, to restore order. Well, there you go. Everybody, please go to the YouTube. Like, subscribe, share. Also, don't forget to review us on iTunes. We're out there. We would love to hear reviews. We try to make things interesting for you, and the only way we know that is with feedback. Also, Facebook.com/fanofhistory. It's a good place to go for updates. Twitter, you can do @thefanofhistory. Dan puts all the updates there. It's a good thing to follow. Twitter is everywhere. So if you don't have Twitter, I'd consider it. Also the web, thefanofhistory.wordpress.com. Patreon.com, very important. That if you enjoy these episodes, that helps us out a lot.
So, we also seem to be on Google Play Podcasts.
Oh yeah, Google Play Podcasts is a new one.
Did you check that?
I have not checked it for this one.
If anyone is listening on Google Play Podcast, please drop us a comment, because it is not available in Sweden. I am not allowed to access it.
Oh, that's...
Because I am in this small socialist country that Google doesn't trust or something.
Wow.
Yeah, and I live a couple of 100 meters from the Google office in Stockholm. And they still won't let me listen to my podcast on Google Play.
That's crazy. We'll check in on that. I think that you have enough of a friend in America that we can get this worked out.
Great.
All right. Well, for this week, I am Brennan.
And I'm Dan.
And this has been The Fan of History.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Patreon.com/fanofhistory. Just $1 an episode would help us out. Thanks, and see you next time.